This is Michelle, and you're listening to Words with Michelle, the podcast, a show where I sit down and have conversations with influencers on a range of topics, anything from natural hair, employment, discrimination, food, relationships, and everything in between. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you want to send me an email, hit me up at michelle@wordsmichelle.com. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. The focus of today's episode is on Black men in media. I would love to do a series on all aspects of media, like TV, music, movies. But for today, I was speaking about Black men in radio. Today's episode was inspired by a past conversation I had with a guest I interviewed on my blog about 4 years ago. I spoke with Richard Cazot, a former Much More Music VJ, and who is currently a content curator / lifestyle expert. And he briefly mentioned what it was like being a Black man in media. He didn't go into detail, but he made me think, what is it like for Black men in media? I've previously spoken with Black females in media, like Tracy Moore and Marcy Yen, and they recounted what their struggles were like. I wanted to get a male point of view. So I reached out to Jonathan Shaw, a DJ, radio host, and creative director at Element radio station, and he spoke about what it was like for him when he first entered radio almost 30 years ago. He spoke about the lack of opportunities, racism, and life in radio. Thanks for being on the show, Jonathan. I started the podcast asking Jonathan to share with us a brief bio. This is what he had to say.
My name is Jonathan Shaw, professionally known to the world as the Juice Man Jonathan Shaw or Jonathan O. Shaw. And I like to use the moniker now, Jonathan, period. That's my bio. Let's just leave it as that. Depending on how you know me, I am a DJ. Depending on how other people know me, I'm a voiceover person. He's the guy who does creative, but to most people, I'm just Jonathan Daddy. Like my kids call me Daddy. So, that's what I'm most proud of. So that's my bio. I'm proud of being, Daddy. That's my number one thing.
Okay. So what has been your experience being a Black male in media?
It's been sometimes the best of times and sometimes the worst of times, like the book, The Tale of Two Cities. And in the sense that when I first started off, there was not a lot of opportunities in mainstream media, whether it be radio, TV, for Black people on camera. There wasn't a Black radio station. We didn't have that identity. We didn't have, like, if you didn't work for City TV or Much Music, good luck. You're not working anywhere in the city, and that was it. That was kind of it. Like there was something, if you wanted to have a career in radio, you had to do community radio for free. So there was the CKLNs, the CIUTs, the CHRYs. Why am I even forgetting that? That's where I spent most of my time. And, then there were the CKMWs, the small little stations that were out there. Like some people had a commercial job, like a Wayne Williams had his stint on, back then it was Dance 108, then Energy 108, and all of that. So like when I was coming up on radio, like Wayne was that guy who, like, I was like, wow, there's a Black person on radio type of thing. But for the most part, my history of listening to radio, or the first Black person that I remember listening to on radio that played the music that I wanted to hear was Ron Nelson, and then Dave Ahmad, and then Deadly Headley on 102. Those were the people who, like, religiously, listened to as well too. Then there was a gentleman by the name of Anthony Bond who had a show on CIUT that I used to listen to as well too. So that came on a little bit after Ron Nelson was on as well. So those were the people who you listened to. But as far as what we did, there wasn't really a lot of opportunities. I remember point blank a girlfriend telling me, why would you want to do radio for? Like, why? Like, there's no money in it. Like, where are you going to go? There's no jobs for you. Like,
what was your reaction to that? because that's pretty like, like kind of deflates you and defeat, it's so negative. How did you take that?
Well, I have the saying that says every minute, every hour, make your pain your power. So for me, I couldn't wait to get on radio to basically say as my first break, I totally blurted out her name on Flow when I got on, like the whole name, not even like the name she goes by, but the whole government. Like I was waiting. It was like I had waited like 10 years to say, I made it. Not even mom, I made it. Not even dad, I made it. Not even family, I made it. But I blurted her name out, and I felt no way about it. That's the one kind of, how do I say, how do you like me now moment in my life.
Before getting his big break on air, Jonathan talks about his break while volunteering at CHRY.
Just the CHRY stuff was again, just, doing, helping people out, paying my dues, that sort of thing. And then on my birthday, I think it was maybe like 92, 93, I actually got to DJ on the radio. And that for me was like, wow, I finally get to play on the radio type of thing. And it was fun. But again, I'll say this to anybody. I never had any aspirations to be on the radio. I never had any aspirations to be on the radio that way. All I wanted to do was just stay in the background and be like a George Lucas and write commercials and direct and be a creative director. Never really wanted to be there. It's just basically a guy who was supposed to voice a commercial didn't show up, and boom, you're in the booth. And
that's
I'm like,
how it started. Wow.
And I'm like reading the commercial, like nervous and doing that sort of stuff.
And it's kind of cool that was just a chance happening, like a chance opportunity for you. See how everything kind of leads to another direction in your life.
You gotta be ready. You're never ready. You just gotta be prepared.
Yeah.
And the one thing I would say to radio students now is, you're never ready for the opportunity, but just be prepared.
Just kind of getting back to what you were saying before. So I guess when you were getting into radio or had interest in radio, the only two options were like Much Music and
Much Music and CityTV.
Okay. So there was no other thing besides like college radio.
Where else were you gonna work? There's nothing. I mean, everything else was rock and roll. It was like a rock and if you do a rock format, cool, but they're not looking at you. Like you would work like way back in the scenes, but nobody. The only black person that I remember being on commercial radio, and this is even like late 90s, was Spider Jones. And there was another lady. There was another lady that was on Miss Walker. I can't remember her first name, but there was a black lady that was on. I think it was Phyllis Walker, who was on CFRB, and she was doing a talk show. Like they came after her left, right, and center.
How
like
so?
It was always political. It was always they didn't, because she was the first. Everybody comes at you. Yeah. Every single person comes at you. People. The black community comes at you. The white community comes at you. Everybody comes at you. They're sitting down with their pen like this, waiting for you to screw up. Right? Like, yeah. I'm telling you, when I was on Flow, people weren't happy for me. I'm telling you straight, they were not happy.
I don't get it. Why not?
They were not happy because you know what it is. There's this thing that happens sometimes where we love art. We want to be front and center. And again, as I say to you, I never want to be front and center. But for the people who get that opportunity, when I would watch TV and I would see a black person, male, female, on the radio or on TV, I was generally happy for them. You know what I mean? Carly Nation we went to the same school, went to Humber College with me. When I saw her on CTV, I was like, wow, yes, she made it. You know what I mean? Yeah. When Marcia got on TV, I was like, yeah, she's on TV, right? When Tracy was doing waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and she had her braids back then and she was just reading the news. I was like, yeah, man, that's my shero. Like that, those things kept, you know what I mean? Yeah. Natasha, when she was doing the Weather Network, I was like, yes, you know what I mean? Another sister on whatever. And then finally, like years later, you have like Kevin Carrington. Kevin was my intern. And when he got on TV, I was like, yes, he's on TV, right? Brandon Gomez, when he said Dutty, on TV. I was like, what? You know what I mean? I was happy for
that. Is legendary. That is legendary.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But again, everybody had that, you know, like now it's different. Now there's more opportunities. But when we first started off, you had people who had been on the radio for a long time who never got that opportunity. So when myself and other people got that opportunity, they were hating. They were hating. Unfortunately, they were hating. Some of them were happy, but a lot of them were hating. A lot of them were hating.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm shocked to hear that because, man, you mentioned Flow. So that's how, was that the first Black-owned radio station though?
Correct.
That was huge. That was so massive.
It was huge, but I do remember members of the community not liking it because they didn't play their music. They didn't like, there was always something.
Yeah.
I can say this twice. I've worked for two first Black-owned radio station in Canada. First adult contemporary Black-owned radio station in Canada. I can say both, right? You know what I mean? First creative director for one. First this, whatever. The list will ding, 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 ding. You know what I mean? But the thing is, I don't look at myself as a person who paved the way or a pioneer. In some ways I do, but the door is open and I've left it open, right?
Mm-hmm.
I made a pact with a bunch of guys, and I'll say it now. I joined the Pan-African Student Collective when I was in 1990. And we publicly said that moving forward, we would never, ever, ever talk negatively or be quoted saying anything to the media with regard to another Black person that's prominent within our community. If I have beef with you or there's something that you did that I don't like, I will pick up the phone and I'll call you. Or we'll meet for lunch or we'll have a conversation. But I will never tear you down. And for 31 years of my life, I've lived up to that. And I even said that yesterday to one of the other individuals who was in that organization. Like, I mean, that organization doesn't exist anymore, but we still, when we said that, we meant it because we need to build rather than tear down. So when it comes to media, especially Black people in media, whether you like them or not, they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
I may not like what somebody says. I may not like how they do certain things, but if I don't like it and I really feel that they're doing something wrong, I will pull them aside and say, hey, let's have a conversation. I've never had to do that.
I was about to ask you that. Okay.
I've never had to do that. The only thing I've ever said to anybody, because somebody came to me and they asked me, I said, dude, do not give up the chair. I actually paraphrased something I saw in Star Trek Generations, where Captain Kirk was talking to Picard, where he says, listen, don't let them promote you. Don't let them move you around. Do not give up that captain's chair. If you have that chair, if you have that voice that you speak to people every single day, never give it up. Never give it up. Because once you give it up, it's really hard to get back in that chair again. Incredibly hard.
Well, okay, getting back to Flow, because that was the first, like you said, you did mention that person's name. So obviously it was transformative, or it was a major event. What was it like working there? Like, what was that like for you as a Black man in media?
In the first 3 months to a year, it was hard, but it was great. It was kind of like, hey, I finally made it. That's the way I felt. I finally made it. I finally was here. You know, it was fun. Like, I will not talk negatively about it because for me, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work when I was doing the mix show. And, you know, again, being from Toronto, you're like, hey, I'm going to play 2 reggae music. Pull up. No, don't do that. No. Mm-mm. No. Don't do it. Yeah, man.
I don't get that. I don't get it.
She wasn't trying, at that time, she wasn't trying to hear it. Like, the program director wasn't trying to hear it. Like, during the, you know, you can play it on the weekend during during what they call the specialty shows, but during the lunchtime, when they're trying to appeal to a massive audience who doesn't understand certain music, you know, whatever. I mean, they don't get our slang. They don't understand it at that time. And again, we're talking 20 years ago, because Flow launched, will be next month, 20 years. It's been 20 years.
Oh my God, wow.
20 years, you know, and then G will be celebrating its 10th anniversary in November.
Wow.
You know, so time does fly. if I look at the music that like we had to play 20 years ago, where they had to find Canadian songs, like they were trying to find as much urban songs as they could find. And I mean, they went back all 10 years trying to find songs to just make the 40% Canadian content. Now we don't have to do it. Now it's like, okay, close your eyes. Okay, what Drake song you want to pick today? What Weeknd song? Whatever. Let's just, you know what I mean? You wouldn't have to play anything else. The Canadian content is so rich now, because again, we have a radio station that would foster that music, that talent coming out of here. Before that, nothing.
Okay, so then let's get back to that. Okay, is it possible to be a Black man and be successful in media or even radio?
Of course. I can honestly say that media for me has done so many things to my life. It's put me in a place where that I had big brothers and big sisters want to work with me because I was on the radio speaking to children. So I became the honorary chair for Big Brothers Big Sisters Bowl for Kids' Sake for 4 years, and I got trophies. I got awards that are sitting right there. Like, you can't see it, but it's up there. Just from being on the radio and volunteering my time and having that audience.
The reason why I asked you that, there was something I listened to, like I had an interview with someone, and he said that he didn't think that he's Black as well. And he said he wasn't sure if a Black man could get to a status of certain other radio. Actually, he wasn't even talking about radio. He was talking more about media, like say news. I guess because he was saying that it was inherently racist.
It is, and it is an old boys network, and I won't say that it isn't. But again, what I say to everybody is go to where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated, or create your own opportunity. I work at a station right now. I work for 106.5 Element FM, and I'm the creative director for Toronto and Ottawa. And when I got there, I was just a writer. I took a junior position. I was just a writer. Now I'm a creative director. I handle Toronto and I handle Ottawa, all the media that happens there. Then the next thing that happened is they, with COVID, they wanted to do something where they wanted to do a mix show. So, okay, they said, hey, would you want to host a mix show? I said, okay, fine, no problem. They brought on a gentleman by the name of Glenn Knight, who was a former DJ on another radio station, who was a production guy, and we've never met. We have never met. And I shouldn't say this because, hey, because radio is smoke and mirrors, but we've never met. And we have the synergy on the air, mixing and doing a show, and we've never met. And we've been doing that show now since June, and it was just supposed to be like this fill-in for the summer until this was going to be over. Now we're on from 8 to 11 on Saturdays originally. Then the show repeats after that between 11 and 2 in the morning. Then it also is on Fridays as well. Then I'm on the radio station, and then I'm on. They asked me to do a couple fill-ins. Okay, fine. You're doing a fill-in. You do a weekend fill-in. You do whatever. They're like, hey, do you want to help out on the morning show? Okay, fine, sure, no problem. And I started helping out on the morning show. And then as of maybe, was it 2 weeks now? I'm the morning person for 106.5.
Wow.
That's mine. I am a Black morning announcer by myself on an Indigenous radio station.
How's that feel?
Mom, I did it. I did it. All the work, all the blood, sweat, and tears, all the late nights, all waking up in the morning at CHY. So is there racism in this industry? Like any other sort of industry? Yes. Do they want to have you look cookie cutter? Yes. But again, if you carve a niche for yourself, and again, I never wanted to be on the air. So when you're not on the air, hey, you can look the way you want to look. You can be the way you want to look. But again, be ready for when that opportunity comes about where they say, do you want to do this? And I have not at Element FM experienced that sort of old boys network. And I've never worked for a station. I've never been hired at one of the stations that were, let's say, quote unquote, corporate. I've always worked for, again, I had no radio opportunities until 2001 when Flow hired me. I was in school up until 92. From 1992 onwards, nothing in Canada. Everything else has been like doing something in the Caribbean, doing something in the States, but never here. They were not interested. You know, the one or two times where I actually got a stint doing something, it was maybe just to fill in or do something else, or they needed, you know, an island sound for a commercial, but it was never, there wasn't anything. I can't say it's racism. I'm just saying there's not the opportunity. I voice commercials every week and I see who is in the meetings. Like, you know, you could be doing something that sounds on the outside to be the blackest thing you've ever seen. And when you see the people who are making the decisions up for it, they look like the Brady Bunch. It don't look like, but that's the industry. It's changing though, because there's been something, but again, there's been some things that I've done where like the ad sales manager is like a young black female. And you're like, yeah. But then there's also some things that I've done where the person's not black, but you can look at them and see that they totally represent the culture for what you're doing. So, you know what I mean? Hey, before it wasn't like that. Before it was like the person was not of your culture, didn't represent the culture, had no idea about the culture, and it was like, hey, can you sound a little bit more street than that? Can you really do a little? That's changing because again, there's more opportunities. We don't have to be media on the radio or on TV. There is the internet. And while there's the internet, you can create whatever you want to create now for yourself, right? You don't have to just be on the air. I've been saying that to people all the time. Like,
I like the fact that you touched upon that you don't have to do traditional radio, that you can do like other stuff, like internet-based things for opportunities, right? I mean, like it's a different world now from when it was when you just got into it, right? I mean, like think about the 20 years ago or even 30 years ago. Jonathan started his professional radio career at the first black-owned radio station, Flow 93.5 in 2001. I asked what the transition was like for him when he left Flow and started working at another black-owned radio station, G98.7, also known as G. From Flow to G, what was that transition like for you?
For me? Well, yeah. Okay. In 2004, for me, I had my daughter in 2003. And when I had my daughter in 2003, I took a little bit of time off work. And as a male, taking time off to spend time with your child was industry suicide. So when I came back, I wasn't on the air. I was Mr. Mom. I was home. I was enjoying my daughter. And when I had to go back to work, I remember it being 11 o'clock that afternoon. And I was kind of like this, because I was so used to taking a nap when she went down for a nap. And then when she learned how to stand and I wasn't there, it really like ripped me. It ripped me. Wow. Like it really ripped me. But again, I enjoyed being, and I got back on the radio and I was doing weekends and I was doing the reggae show on Flow for a minute. But for me, I was kind of done. I was kind of like, I wanted to do something different. Like the station was going, I shouldn't say that in a negative way, but a radio announcer has about 2.5 to 3 years where you're on the radio before it's time for you to move or them to find somebody else. That's generally the way it is, the way the books work.
That's a short time.
Exactly. You have about 2.5 to 3 years doing something before they look to replace you with somebody else. Some people last longer. Yeah. Some people don't last as long. But generally 2.5 to 3 years is generally your lifespan on a particular format. That's generally what they say. It's just like a football player. You stay at a particular team, whatever. If you're not the morning person or you're not the afternoon driver, you're just doing swing, it's about 2.5 to 3 years before they just goodbye. Some people last longer. But I know for myself, I would like in what I wanted to do as an individual, I think in where the station was at that particular time, it was time for me to move. and I got away from radio for a while. I got away from radio for maybe about a couple of years, and I did different things. I started my own business. I started doing a lot of weddings and corporate functions, whatever. Because to be honest with you, I had sunk a lot of time and a lot of energy just in radio. And as a person knowing how radio works, where like one day you're sitting here, you know, you're fine, and then you get a tap on your shoulder. Hey, can you come see me in the office, please? Yeah, okay, cool. We're sitting in the office. Oh, you're fired. And that's kind of how it works. So I said to myself, let me make sure that I have, as my mom always used to say, you know what I mean, West Indian parents, you know, make sure you have something to fall back on. So that's when I started doing things for me. Because I used to be that guy. I used to always only hand out the work business card. You know, that's the only way you could reach me was work. So when that ended, or if that were to end, and anybody wanted me to DJ or do anything else, you're done.
Yeah.
Right. So I started planning my life as if radio never existed. So I made sure to go back out and start DJing. I made sure and learned about equipment. I made sure and learned the other aspects about things. I then took a job in radio sales. I worked for Wave 94.7. And I was at Wave for about a year and a half. And then I went into the corporate world of Bell. And I worked for Bell for a minute, you know, doing like phones and that stuff. And again, totally out of radio.
While out of the radio industry, Jonathan kept running into Fitzroy Gordon, otherwise known as Mr. G, founder of G98.7 FM.
And then I saw Mr. G in 2004. And it's kind of funny. And he says, when I get my radio station, I'm going to hire you. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And every time I see him, he'd always say, hey, make sure you put in your resume and I'm going to hire you. I said, okay, whatever. When I got hired at Wave, the gentleman who owned Wave was affiliated with G. He was like, if I hire you, don't be thinking you're jumping ship over there because I want you over here. I said, okay, no, whatever. And I said, I was just doing sales. And I did sales for a minute and then I quit. Then G got the license and all that stuff that went behind the scenes, and people kept saying, hey, Juice, you gonna apply? And I'm like, nah, whatever. And again, saw Mr. Gordon again that summer. And he's like, you're applying, right? I said, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'll apply. And he gave me his card. And he said, this is my email address. And what's funny is I kept running into him in the oddest place. I was doing laundry. I'd see him. Then I saw him with my son's mom. Again, same laundromat. I'm like, what up? I went to go buy food at Willie's Jerk. My man's in there as well, too, because the gentleman who owned Willie's Jerk owned the radio station. So I'd see him in there, too. And he kept saying, make sure you apply. He kept saying that. And I said, I did. And then he said, well, I didn't get your resume. And then he said, well, okay, here's my number. He gave me the card, as I said. And I went down for the interview, and they hired me to do middays on the radio station. When the station launched, Wayne Williams wanted me to do creative as opposed to being on the air. And I was like, okay. And that was it. And I did the Sugar Daddies thing for a minute, and I did the background thing for a minute. And then, you know, finally got my time back on air doing 1 day a week. And I was on radio for 1 day a week for about 2 years, maybe. I was like, okay, I'm only on here 1 day a week. I'm doing some stuff. And I was like, well, you know, it's time for me, as I always do. There's like this mental clock in my head that says, okay, I'm doing this. And I've said it many times. I could be doing the thing that you and everybody else think is like the greatest thing in the world. And this light goes off in my head to say, are you doing all you can do? Is there something else you could do? And that kind of bug went in there. So a couple of people had left the radio station over a couple of years. One of which was a guy who did production. One of which was one of the consultants. One of which was also the music director. And when they left, I was like, don't forget me, you know. He said, nah, man. And one day I'm sitting in the office and my phone rings. My cell phone rings. He says, Juice, I need a favor. He goes, what? I need you to write me 2 commercials like stat. Okay. For who? Don't worry about that. Just write me 2 commercials, man. Just write 2 commercials. Gave me the information. He didn't even give me the information. He just said, yo, just go on the website. Just write me 2 commercials. I was like, okay. blah, 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 blah. Wrote the commercials, sent them off. He says, oh, these are wicked. Great. Then he calls me up again, maybe like a week later. He's like, Juice, you want to come work for us? I was like, make me an offer I can't refuse.
Okay, Godfather.
Hey, my favorite movie. It's my favorite. And I said, cool. So I went and I did a couple of interviews and all the other sort of stuff. And they were like, okay, yeah, we like what we see. And unfortunately, Mr. Gordon died. So here I am on the stage with everybody else, for the funeral and all the other sort of stuff, the viewing. And I'm not going to be there. Right. So I wanted to make it very clear, because I had said to them earlier that year, what are you doing with me? I'm only on the radio 1 day a week. I need to feed my family. I need to do different things. What are we doing? And they said, yeah, we're working it out. We're doing this. We're da-da-da. And I was like, you know what? I'd heard that before. At the end of the day, I got to look out for me. So I took the job at Element. It was great. And I got to work with some individuals where I was like the dumbest person in the room. And I was really happy to be the dumbest person in the room. Because I got to learn from Doug Thompson. Doug Thompson has more Crystal Awards for writing and production than he's like the Quincy Jones of like radio. Like he has like awards. Like he's worked with everybody. John Candy, this person wrote for that person, whatever. He's done all that stuff.
Although Jonathan was working with mentors and continuing to hone his craft, he still wanted to pass on some advice to students of color trying to make it in the radio biz.
To the Black students, I give them another conversation. I say, look, learn how to do something more than just being on air. Because if all you are, and I hate to use this expression, a one-trick pony, you're not going to last long in this industry. You need to learn how to do stuff. Even the stuff, and trust me, I've seen people who are on the radio and, they've been on the radio for a minute and they don't know how to do certain things. And I'm saying to myself, one day, somebody's not going to show up. It's going to be a blizzard and you're screwed. You got to learn how to do that. And you'll stay you'll stay in the building a lot longer if they can use you somewhere else. Like, I'm telling you the truth. There's been days where like, I know that I was on the chopping block because they were doing back cuts and whatever. And they're like, we can't get rid of Juice because Juice knows how to write. Juice knows how to produce. Juice knows how to sell commercials. Juice can program a radio station. Juice can do a mix show. Juice can host a party. So that's 5-6 things that I can do. So I became Heyman.
Wow.
I know how to do these things. I could run a radio station because I've done the different facets of that industry. I know how to do those things. But some people have only focused on one part of their job. They've never wanted to learn the other part. So again, there's a reason why, they did that show Heyman, the Living Color Heyman, where the guy put on this hat and then he put on the next hat and he put on another hat. Because I'm sorry, I'm Caribbean, man. We wear many hats. We have to.
I love it. I'm Caribbean. We got to do it. I think just for longevity, like you were saying, like you can't, it's good to master like a skill, but to do other things, you do become, they can't just, you're not disposable. Do you know what I mean? Like they need you at that point. You're a value.
Yeah, there's so many individuals who were on radio today and who are selling shoes tomorrow.
Wow.
Period.
In addition to working in radio, Jonathan is also a voice actor. He shares with us what some of his casting calls are like.
I will say when it comes to the racism, the racism part about it is a lot of times when people are looking for voices to read a script, and I go and I get these auditions when I do non-union stuff, my agent will send me, the casting call stuff, and it will say, we're looking for a Justin Bateman type. Well, that ain't me. We're looking for a Matthew McConaughey type of voice. We're looking for that. And then when they finally have something that's, let's say, urban or Black, they will say, please make sure you audition for this because it's the only Black thing that's there. And,
Wow.
so they want, so it's usually, when it comes to those things, it's usually me and maybe three people. Because to be honest with you, there's not a lot of black male voices out there. Straight read. There's guys who sound street. There's guys who sound club. There's guys who sound island. But there's not a lot of straight read guys out there who do what I do. That's just the way it is. And I've been saying to people for years, we need more of you. But again, it's a matter of putting in the work. It's a matter of, sitting down with somebody like myself and saying, okay, I need you to read this. And I've worked with guys in the industry, and I'm not trying to dog anybody, but a lot of them don't want to read commercials.
Why is that? I think that'd be so much fun.
They don't, because at the end of the day, everybody's about their paper. So when you work at a radio station, you don't get any extra money for reading a commercial. It's part of your job, but people just don't want to do it.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, I worked at a couple of radio stations, and they don't want to do it. If there's not something at the end of the rainbow for them, they're not interested in doing it. So a lot of guys, and again, there's a lot of people who don't want to apply. Like when there's a job for something, I went to people and I said, hey, even when Flo was hiring, Flo, come high, like this is the only thing we got. Apply. Like, no, man, I've been on this radio station doing college radio for the last so often. They should know who I am. Like that kind of arrogancy. And I've had to say, and again, like they feel like they deserve stuff because they're on community radio. And they didn't realize, I mean, when you see the numbers of who listens to community radio, let's say, as opposed to, let's say, listen to 680 News, I mean, it's like, this is CHRY. This is maybe CKLN. This is CIUT. And here is,
Wow.
80 News, right? And again, going back to when my program director says this, it says, well, go on a subway. Ask a person on a subway, name me who they listen to on the radio. Just anybody. Back then, they would usually have said Roger, Rick, and Marilyn, Aaron Gray, Bob McGee. Names that they could know. They weren't saying who was on CHOI. They weren't saying CKLN. Like, we were Black people famous. So when it comes, so some people may say that, hey, it's racism, whatever. And I'm not saying that racism does not exist. You got to look at it and say to yourself, you're trying to do media in a country that doesn't have a lot of us to begin with, that doesn't really care if we're there or not. The reason why the word urban was created is because Black was too offensive. There were products that were non-urban designated. So if you have products that are non-urban designated, that means that they don't even try to want those. They didn't want a Lexus. They didn't want Black people driving a Lexus, so they're not going to market it to them. I mean, all of a sudden we got it, and now there is a Black division, or there's people. Like the one thing in media that you're seeing a lot now is mixed race people.
Yep.
And so what you're seeing is the Black family no longer exists in media. A dark-skinned Black family does no longer exist.
As of now, you're saying?
They don't. How many commercials you see with two dark-skinned Black people? You don't. You'll see a white woman and a Black man. You'll see Chinese Black man. You'll see Indian and whatever. You're seeing a lot of mixture because, again, that's kind of the way the world is going. But you do not see the traditional dark-skinned Black family. You do not see it in media because that's not like, I mean, you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it as far as media is concerned. You're not seeing it as far as commercials are concerned. You're not seeing it in everyday life. If you go to certain places in Toronto and you see who's there, like my daughter goes to a school, out in Burlington. She is the only child in her school with a Black mother and a Black father. Everybody else is biracial.
Seriously.
Serious thing. So if that's what you're seeing in certain areas, and they're putting out a product that is for an affluent area, which they live in, you're not going to see a Black family because that's not who's representative of that community.
Yeah.
So again, you could, scream racism, but that's just the way it is. I mean, we all, trust me, I mean, because I do media, I'm more conscious of that. Because I write commercials and I direct commercials, I'm more conscious of what imagery they're putting out there. Do they do products where they have, like, biggest monkey in the jungle with H&M? Yeah, they do that. We still go back in that store and we go do that. You know what I mean? Do we still buy Ivory soap? Yes, we still buy Ivory soap. Do we still buy, Dove soap? Yeah, we do. Do we still buy Sauvage cologne, who uses an indigenous person, like in the native headdress, because Sauvage basically is savage.
Yeah.
And the word that they used to use for indigenous people was to call them savages. And you're going to have a person in a native thing, and you put that out there, and you do that to garner attention, and then try to do your apology afterwards, because again, you want people on your brand and whatever. Like, people do this in marketing. I voiced a Bio commercial and had like 21 people in the studio for a 15-second commercial. I had 21 people watching me read a 15-second commercial. People on their tablets doing whatever the case may be, blah, blah, blah. Not one black face inside.
Okay, why were they watching you? What was that? Why?
Because that's how many people it has to go through before it goes to air.
Okay.
So when they make these mistakes, and I've talked about it many times. I remember, talking to a friend of mine who used to work for CTV, and we used to talk about this all the time. We said, when they make these mistakes with marketing, it's not that they don't know, it's like they don't care. They never decided to say, hey, when they do these focus groups, because they do that as well too with products, when they do these focus groups, they don't pick people who look like us to sit there and go, yo, hey, that's racist. 48 Laws of Power, I tell every black person to read that book. If you're going to go in a corporate world, you need to read that book, because we break every single one of those rules because we're too passionate. That's what we do. We are emotional people. We do things with passion. And in a work environment, when you're dealing with corporate, there's no passion. There should be no passion. I mean, you do your work with diligence, and you wake up and you do your stuff, but there's so many rules that we break every single day. And I was king of breaking rule number one, the king of it. I would go into the job and learn everything there is to know, more so than my boss. And all these people are getting promoted over me. I'm like, what's going on? Well, why would the boss hire, like, you're a threat. You're a threat. That's why I'm saying, for a lot of my career, I sat on the bench. Because
do you think it has to do with your race or your potential? Because that's actually
a lot of both.
Yeah.
You can't come in, like, I don't see it until I take a picture. I'm a 6'5", 295 pounds now, because I put on weight, COVID-15. 295 pound, black man with dreads. And that is a very threatening picture to people of both races. And are you going to make the face of your company this big black man? Are you going to make this uppity Negro, a boss over these white people who think that they know more than you do, but actually you know more than them? These are the little things that happen every single day that we have to consider in our industry. And if you want, and there's a lot of black people who are in jobs who they're in that glass ceiling where it will never break, where you're threatening to that boss, that individual. It doesn't have to be anything that you've basically done. And I tell my children this all the time. I said, listen, nobody in this world has to like you. Stop fooling yourself. The only people in this world that like you are your parents. And sometimes you do stuff where we look at you sometimes and we're like, yo, what? But I said, whether you're religious or not, just bear with me for a minute. Jesus walked on water, made the blind man see, met a man, fed the hungry, and all these things. And he still crucified this man and put him on a cross. So who the hell are you?
That's true. Wow.
Who the hell are you? You do your job and get up, get your paycheck, do what you got to do. Learn what you need to learn, feed your family, whatever. But at the same token, do your little thing, your little hustling on the side legally that garners you that money, garners you that attention. Make sure you have something that, again, if they decide that they don't ever want you anymore, you've already lined up yourself, that you have that thing that, whatever it is. For me, it could be baking. For me, it could be doing something else. It could be doing voice lessons, whatever it may be, but do something else besides what you do 24/7. Because your job or your career should not define you more so than your paycheck. Your job is what they pay you to do a service. Your business is something you do to leave generational wealth for your children and for your children's children. And that's the way you should look at it. It shouldn't be something that you just do. Okay, it's a hobby. People ask me, is music for you a hobby? I said, no, it's my air. It's something I do in my sleep. So it's something I can always fall back on. It's something that I can always do. I can always show my children what I do. If they have an interest in radio, wonderful. But that foundation of music and musical theory and all that other sort of stuff and things around that aspect of something that I can leave for them, whatever. I can teach music. I can write music. I can write a song. I can do something else outside of that. If I never went to a radio station again, what could I do? Could I do DJ a wedding? Could I do a corporate function? Could I write a play? Could I write a musical score? Could I do all these different things? And then all of a sudden, these antennas start going off in all these different directions because I thought that way. But if all you've ever thought every single day is waking up and making sure you catch the 8:10 GO train out of Mount Pleasant Station, then you're dead in the water.
Jonathan dropped some knowledge on us. He definitely raised valid questions, provided good sound advice, and openly and honestly shared his experience getting into radio. Thanks for the chat, Jonathan. Thanks again for listening to the latest episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. Just a reminder, you can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also listen to the shows on my blog at wordswithmichelle.com. You can follow me on Instagram at wordswmichelle, Twitter at wordswmichelle, and on Facebook, facebook.com/wordswithmichelle. If you have any questions or would like to provide a comment or feedback, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you have a topic, you can email me at michelle@wordswithmichelle.com. You can also email me if you're interested in sponsoring my podcast. Thanks again for listening to the show, and until next time, bye.